In this series of videos, I've been looking at word problems that you might encounter in a basic algebra class. And we're really focusing on the different types that you might encounter and the approach you might take to solve them. So on this particular one, lesson 1.4, we're going to be looking at one involving simple interest. So here's a problem. James is to invest a total of $50,000 in two accounts. One account pays simple interest at 3% and the other pays at 2%. If James wants a total return of $1,300 in the first year, how much should he invest at each rate? So again, this is simple interest. So the formula for simple interest, I have it there. You see it. Interest is equal to P times R times T, where P is the principal, R is the rate of interest, and T is the time in years. So for example, if you have, say, $100, and you invest at an interest rate of 5%, which in a decimal would be 0.05, for 1 year, that's times 1. Multiply that out, so it's principal $100, the rate is 0.05 or 5%. The time is 1 year, so you would come up with $5. So your interest for the first year would be $5. So simple interest is constant, so it would be $5 every year. If you're dealing with compound interest, that does change, but here we're dealing with just simple interest. Okay, so there you have an example how that works. So let's look at the formulas, the setup that I have here. We have two amounts, so again, some of these problems can be worked with two variables, x and y. Sometimes you have problems that can be worked with three variables. But so far we've been able to do the problems with one variable. This one could be done with two variables if I wanted to. Here I let x equal to the amount invested at 3%. I could let y equal the amount invested at 2% and set up two equations with two variables and solve it. But this one's pretty straightforward, so I can do it with one variable. If I let x equal to the amount invested at 3%, since I know I'm investing a total of $50,000, then 50,000 minus x is what I have left to invest at the other interest rate, which is at 2%. Okay, so that's the setup right there for the variables. And then to set up an equation, which is what we're actually doing here. Again, some of these you can work out using trial and error and figure out how much you would invest at each rate. But if you set up an equation, you get the answer a lot quicker. So here's what I set up here. Since x is the amount invested at 3%, then I'm going to have the principal, which in this case is x, multiplied by the rate, which is 0.03, that's the 3% is a decimal, and the time is 1, so this is multiplied by 1, so basically it just leaves me 0.03x. Okay, the other amount then is invested at 2%, so that's the principal, 50,000 minus x, multiplied by the rate of interest, in this case 2%, or 0.02 is a decimal. Again, the time is 1 year, multiplied by 1. There's your setup. Okay. So now it's just a matter of solving this equation for x. .03x and then in the second part I just multiply through by the parentheses by the 0.02. So 0.02 times 50,000 gives me 1,000. Okay, and then 0.02 times minus x gives me a minus 0.02x. and that'll give me what's on the other side, which is the 1300. Okay, now it's just a matter of isolating the variable. So I want to keep my x's on the same side, everything else on the other side, and I solve for the x. So in this case, I have 0.03x minus 0.02x gives me a 0.01x on the left side. Okay, so now the 1,000, I have to put it on the other side. So one way to do that is to add negative 1,000 to both sides. If I add negative 1,000 to this side, obviously that'll cancel the 1,000, and then negative 1,000 added to the 1,300 gives me 300. So I get 0.01x is equal to 300. Okay, so now to isolate the x, I want to make that 0.01 a 1. So I can have 1x or just x. So one way to do that is to simply just divide both sides by 0.01. So if I divide the left side by 0.01, that would just leave me x, because 0.01 divided by 0.01 would be x. And then if I do that, I have to do the same thing to both sides to keep this balanced. So 300 divided by 0.01 is 30,000. And that, of course, is in dollars. Okay, so 30,000. That's x, but what was x? X was the amount invested at 3%. Okay, so since I know I have a total of 50,000, if I subtract 30,000 from 50,000, I get 20,000. Okay, this is all, of course, all in dollars. So that I would conclude then that the amount invested at 3% would be 30,000, and the amount invested at 2% would be 20,000. And of course, you can easily check your answer if you multiply the 30,000 by 0.03 and multiply the 20,000 by 0.02. Add them up, and you're going to get the return that James wanted, which is 1,300. Okay, so this concludes this video. I'll continue with another video on related problems to basic algebra. If you have any other suggestions or any other types of problems that you want to see, please post them, and I will consider your requests as long as you're subscribing to the channel. But I'm going to continue with these types of problems unless I get a request to work some other types of problems. I hope these are helping you. I have a lot of other videos on just algebra in general, technology and so forth, and I have another channel that I've mentioned before that you can check out. But any suggestions I do appreciate, and I do appreciate that you subscribe to my channel, and we'll see you next time.